afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Dorothy Mercer from Talk Story TV, coming to you from our studios in Colorado and Michigan. Today we have a very interesting gentleman that we'll be interviewing. He's a doctor of medicine and also has had a fantastic career as a medical missionary. He's also written a book about, well, it's a fiction book, but it includes a lot of his adventures in Africa. So stay tuned, and I will introduce you to my new friend, Dale Williams. Welcome to the show, Dale.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Dale is an MD, and that doesn't show after his name, but he's a lot of other things too. He has an interesting career as a doctor for over 20 years, I believe it is, in Michigan. Also, he served in Africa and in Taiwan. He served with World Vision. He started a medical center in Michigan that served the indigent and billed them according to their ability to pay. That was an operation for 10 years under his name, and then it was taken over by one of the local hospitals. One of his most interesting adventures was at a refugee camp after genocide, and so we're going to talk to a little bit about all those things. First of all, Dale, would you mind telling our viewers how you happened to get started and called into this mission?
Well, first of all, let me do a slight correction. I was in practice 30 years.
Okay,
but,
thank you.
After medical school, I was in family practice. But family practice didn't have a residency in those days. And so I felt I needed more training, and so I signed up with World Vision to spend a year in Taiwan. And got more experience than I really cared than I expected. Then I came back to Muskegon and went in family practice.
Okay.
I sort of liked it, and I had a good friend, Jim Franks, who was with World Vision. And over the years, I used to travel with him to all different parts of Africa, frequently in China and Korea. And then when I retired, I went back and got an MBA because I sort of liked business and did fairly well in that. And so when we sold our last company, I put about half the money into a foundation that was sort of God's money. And to do God's work, and since then we've been all over the place, so helping people.
It's just amazing. You've done so many things. I don't know where to start. Tell us a little bit about this experience in Rwanda.
Well, actually, I sort of got maybe suckered into it's not the word, but just pushed into it by my son, Andrew. He had gone to the refugee camp earlier and working through a nonprofit organization called UMCOR, and he came back and said, "Dad, you just got to go." Well, most of my work before had been in Asia, primarily China, Taiwan, Korea, and so forth. And so, but, what the heck? I wasn't that busy, so I decided to go there. And so it was quite an experience. I think it's the first time I've ever been frightened on my mission trips. What happened is that during the war in Rwanda, the Hutu government had started a genocide against the Tutsis. Tutsis fled. Without going into all the details, they came back as an army and they defeated the Rwandan government. When that happened, thousands and thousands of people over a weekend fled Rwanda and came into Goma, which is right on the border. It's in Zaire, or what we call the Congo now. And so then there was nothing. They looted everything. They had to eat. They cut down the trees for firewood. the banks were closed. There were no government services. The only authority, if you want to call that was the Zaire government, army. Unfortunately, most of the soldiers hadn't been paid for 6 months, and the majority of them seemed to be, at least the ones we saw, were young teenagers with automatic weapons and sort of half uniforms. Until the UN came in. The UN came in and they hired a number of these soldiers, and they paid them, and they set up the camp, they distributed the food and so forth. But the others were just kind of wandering around, and the orders were, you never drive anything. You always have a driver, a local driver. You never go any place during the day. We like to go to the open market they had there, unless you had 4 people with you, and because you would be stopped and fined. They think of something to fine you for. And so, and at night, we had guards in the compound with Walden thing. So it was a bit hairy at times. But during the day, in the refugee camp, there was order because of the soldiers there, and we ran a clinic for what we call the vulnerables. These are people who couldn't get to the main medical clinic. There's a big clinic there, a lot of French doctors. And but these were orphans, they were old people, they were handicapped. And so we saw them, and it was a very interesting thing. Once you get to know them, just like most any place, once you get to know the people, they're fine. And they used to tell us stories because, as I think I mentioned someplace before, most of their ailments concerned stress. Mm-hmm. You know, they didn't know what was going on at home. They didn't know what happened to their relatives. Were they still alive? Was their home occupied? Was it torn down? Who was on their farm? And what family members have been killed? If you're an old person, who's going to take care of you? So there's a lot of things like headaches, stomach upset, all kinds of GI problems and so forth. But what seemed to help is to let them talk. Well, of course, I don't understand Kinyarwanda language, but my translator did, and so I'd sit there. He would translate and let them talk, just let them talk. And so they'd talk about their experiences. And that's when I sort of got the idea, well, gee, somebody ought to put this in writing. And you know, like most people, how many people have you heard say, hey, I should really write a book? Well,
everybody.
Everybody. It's not that easy, let me tell you. 4 years to get the thing written, about 10 different... Huh?
It took you 4 years to write your book. It's
yeah, because I kept rewriting it. And then my wife went through it, and she said, you got too much violence in here. And I said, I don't have hardly any violence compared to what went on. You know, during this genocide, anywhere from 500,000 to 1 million people were killed within about a 2 months period. And it was done up close and personal, not like a gun. It was with mostly machetes, and they have a very heavy hoe. It's about that big, and it's it's heavy. I guess it must weigh about 5 pounds. Well, not that much, maybe 3 pounds. And so they use this to chop people off too, right up close. And they like to use fire a lot. They love to throw fire, or so-called Molotov cocktail, into the homes of Tutsis and watch it burn. It was extremely brutal. And so, you know, stuff I put in was sort of nothing, but as I think both my publisher and my wife have pointed out, men don't buy books, women do. And so we toned that way down. And but it was quite a different experience for me. Well, I'm not going to all the problems, but
so you have a hero in your book, and
yes.
and is he patterned after anybody, or is he just somebody you made up to make it a good story?
Well, I think he's like me, but he's a lot younger, a lot taller, better looking, and seems to attract the women better than I do. But so,
Okay.
no, he's a combination. He's, I guess, what I'd like to be. But a lot of the stuff that went on were based on my experiences or experiences of other doctors that I talked with there and people. And so he has quite an adventure. Want me to talk about the book at all?
Don't give away the ending, Dale.
No, I won't give away the
because
ending.
it has a fabulous ending, but I've read the book and I love it. This doctor, yes, he's the epitome of the American hero. And he goes to Africa, and of course he meets a beautiful woman, right? And
Yes.
then nature takes its course. And
certainly
he
does.
and this woman get into all kinds of trouble, and that's where your experience with these refugees comes in. You make up, you don't have to make it up because it happened, didn't it? A lot of people
Yes.
had this trouble. But you have a unique experience. Very, very, very few people could write that kind of a book. It's just an amazing book. And what's the name of your book?
Remember How Much I Love You.
Yeah.
And it has to do, it has to do with that being said someplace in the book. Let me just put it that way.
So
And
when is your book coming out? Do you know?
probably sometime right after the holidays, I would guess.
Okay.
Working with a publisher and so forth, there are a lot of things I didn't know you had to do, and like get the cover finished up and approved, and a lot of little details. But I think we'll have it done by the first of the year or so.
Okay. Well, then we'll look for it on Amazon. It's coming out in ebook first, I suppose,
Yes.
and then maybe in a hardcover later. So, in talking with you earlier, you told me a little bit about an interesting experience in China. People might remember some of that. What happened?
Well, the most memorable experience in China was when I was working in the Children's Hospital in Pingtung, Taiwan. I was replacing two doctors who had gone on leave, and there was one doctor there, a surgeon, and he had gone on vacation up to one of the cities up north. And a typhoon hit. Now, a typhoon is the same as a hurricane in Florida. High winds, rain, thunder, everything. And so I'm home, and they come and get me because this nurse who's pregnant is having trouble in labor, and I'm the only doctor there. So I get on my bike and my rain jacket and I bike off to the hospital, and fortunately we had a head nurse, Chinese lady, but she was really sharp, and she said, we're going to have to do a C-section on her because it's hung up. Well, in my internship I helped at C-sections. I knew how to do them in theory, but I had never done one, which, to make it even worse, the typhoon was on. And so the windows in the surgery suite were rattling. The lights kept going on and going off. The nurse was given the anesthesia, thank heavens, and it was probably had more to do with making it come out right than I did. But I did the C-sections, and everything came out all right. But the weird thing is, to this day, I do not remember doing the surgery. I was that scared. It's probably one of the few times in my life I've ever been panicked, but we got it done. So, as I said, I got more experience there than I really expected in Taiwan.
You don't
But it was,
remember doing it. I could just
No, I don't
imagine
remember
that
at all.
nurse. What was she thinking? Maybe the
Oh,
nurse
she was,
did it.
she was, you know, she was in her 50s. To me at the time, she was no lady. But she was just one of these drill sergeants, and people didn't fool with her. And she told me what to do, and
You did it.
and I knew how to make the cut and so forth.
She took your hand and you went,
No, she was passing gas up front.
oh.
So, but to this day, I don't remember.
Was there a
remember
baby involved here? Did the baby cry and all that?
Oh yeah, everybody was fine. You know, there's better ways to do a C-section. I did the one straight down the middle, which is the easiest. Most accomplished surgeons do one lower so the scar doesn't show as much. But aside from not having the best scar in the world, everything came out fine.
Oh, goodness. Well, that's a great story. That's a new one.
Yeah, I know. I even to this day get nervous when I talk about it. So
Yeah, you are. Okay, well, tell us
Yeah.
about what happened in Tiananmen Square.
where?
Tiananmen Square?
Oh, Tiananmen Square.
Yeah.
I was there with Jim Franks. I went with Jim Franks frequently, and he was working with International Aid then, which is a spin-off from World Vision. And we were there as a guest of the Chinese Red Cross. Actually, I'm a member of the Chinese Red Cross. I have a pen to prove it. And we helped them get equipment, X-ray stuff, and so forth. So anyway, we got there, the Tiananmen Square thing had started. And so we were riding the bus around there, you know, giving us the usual tour. And we were in the back of the Forbidden City, and they'd stopped to pick somebody up. And I said, I want out. I had my son Andrew with me. I said, I want out. I want to go see what's going on the other side of the Forbidden City in Tiananmen Square. Oh, no, you can't do that. You can't do, oh, no, you don't really want to see that, and blah, blah, blah. And the bus was full of missionaries, and American missionaries, and all this, oh, no, you don't want to upset your host, blah, blah, blah. And I says, I intend to get off this bus. Well, you have to get back by yourself. And I says, I can get back by myself. And so we got out, and we walked around the city, and the Forbidden City is a mammoth block. And we got around there into the square, and couldn't believe it. People were clapping, and they were singing, and they were waving banners. Policemen were clapping. It was just a feeling of freedom, and it was like almost like having drank too much alcohol type of thing. And and we went and we talked to a bunch of students. We took some movies, some videos, and it went on for a couple of days, and we kept going down there, and but we had to get back, and so we flew out of Beijing the day before the tanks moved, so we missed that. But we flew into Hong Kong at the edge of a typhoon, and I don't know if you know Hong Kong, but Hong Kong its old airport was in the city. It was rather short, and so we came flying, and Andy was just about 14 at the time, and 14 or 15. And we were bumping all around because of the winds and so forth, and Andy kept saying, Dad, he says, we're going to crash. And I said, no, Andy, this pilot knows what he's doing. Don't worry about it. We'll be fine. Thinking, we're going to crash. And but he came in like a fighter pilot, and he hit that runway, and then, you know, reversed the engines very fast, and did a marvelous job. And so that was quite an adventure. When Andy was in college, his teacher at Albion, his teacher was talking about Tiananmen Square, and he says, that's not the way it happened. And she says, how do you know? Were you there? And he said, yeah. And so then he told him what happened. He got an A on that class. So.
I'll bet he did.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Whew. I've got so many stories, and you're a great storyteller. You've been other places in the world. What are some of the other places you've been?
Well, I guess the worst, that was probably one of the best experiences I had. The worst experience was in Ethiopia. That was when Jim and I went there. At the time, the government was communist government in Ethiopia, and there was a rebellion going on in the north. And there was famine. And so the people were starving to death. But since the rebels were in the north, the government wouldn't allow trucks carrying relief to go north. They were going to starve out the rebels, so to speak. And so the only way to get there and bring in supplies was by air. Well, that put a real strict limit on what you could do.
Yeah.
We lived in a compound, a walled-in compound, very basic. You want to wash, you go outside and turn on the faucet and type of thing. And then we had to walk across about 3 fields to get to the compound, where they had the children, sick people, where they had the supplies, where they would feed people from and so forth. They only had enough supplies of milk and so forth for 500 infants. And so, since there were thousands of them out there, the choice was to feed them all and let them all starve, or do we feed 500 and save 500? Terrible decision they had to make. They decided to go with the 500. And so those people were given tokens, which they guarded very carefully, because every morning they came in with a token. They were given the milk and whatever else they gave them for the babies. So when I would walk from our compound to the medical station where I worked, I kept feeling this one woman would sit right outside there, and I'd feel just a very light touch on my wrist or my arm. And first I was just very surprised and looked at her. She held up this baby. Face was shrunken, big eyes looking at you. Sometimes wonder if that was Jesus' eyes looking at me. And, here was this American. He can solve a problem, see. And I just had to shake my head, and I'd go across, and pretty soon, the next couple of days, more people would touch my arm, hold up those babies. There was nothing I could do. And then one day, she wasn't there. But we were burying children. There were just rows and rows of small mounds outside the thing. My children were in that age group type of thing, and so it was very difficult, very hard for me. That's when I sort of decided maybe it's time I realized that most of what I consider problems were just little obstacles in the road. I didn't have any real problems. And real problems when your kids are starving to death, or you don't have a place to live, or something like this. So that was the worst experience I ever had. Day after day.
Oh, that was terrible, wasn't it? And you would go to the clinic then, and patients...
Try and save kids, but we didn't have a lot. And so we had IVs, but some we saved, an awful lot of them we lost. Yeah, it was not my finest hour of practicing medicine. Medicine, you like to see people improve, but you have facilities for that to happen. There, you just sort of have to make do.
You've also been to some of the Caribbean islands, places. What'd you do there?
Yeah, we were down in Central America during the Contra War. Remember, Nicaragua had the Contras and so forth, and we went down there, and that was sort of how do I want to say, you sort of get set in your ways, at least I do, and you don't like to change your mind, but for instance, we were in Guatemala. Now, Guatemala is a beautiful country. High mountains, green, just beautiful. but about, and I don't know the number, let's just say 20 families own 90% of good land. And so we were down there, we were talking with the Army people and so forth, and everybody was mad with the Contras, and I had to admit to them that, hey, if I lived here and I wasn't one of those 20 families, I'd probably be right out there with them, because there's such inequities. There are, I think one of the things that's very discouraging, and if you're trying to help people, you have to fight against all the time, is the amount of difficulty out there.
The what?
Amount of evil out there. The way some people have to live. And like working in Africa, working in Africa, working in Rwanda, our foundation, Koinonia Foundation, has a program called the Beacon Program. And what it is we train single mothers in business practice, in business basics. And then we put them in, they form groups, cooperatives of 10 to 20 women. We give them free solar lights, and they can sell those, and then they're able to buy others at wholesale and sell them. To do this, we have not only the foundation, but we have a for-profit company, because for tax reasons, we don't like the foundation selling.
Okay.
But it donates, the for-profit donates its profits to the foundation.
Okay.
So, working with the for-profit, we work with men. The corruption, corruption perhaps a harsh word. The incentives that are required from men are disturbing. We have learned to live with it. You put a certain limit on what you will give away. But the women are something else. These are survivors. These are women with children who have to survive. And I'll tell you, once we train them, they are tigers. I think a good example of this, we had a class of 20 women, and it was being taught by a student from the Ross program at U of M, the Ross MBA program. He came over, his name was Jackson, Dale Jackson. And so he'd gone through all the lecture and so forth. And the last day, he said to him, I'm going to do what we do in the MBA classes. I want you to break in groups of 4. So there were 5 groups. He said, I want you to go off by yourself, and when you come back, you tell me of a plan to run a business. Well, everybody, including my son, everybody kept saying, that is stupid. These women are not educated. Half of them can't even read and write. And he says, just let me do my thing, will you? And so they did. They came back, and you can't believe it. One group had a plan to raise chickens and hatch the chickens. And I don't remember all the details because I was here and they were over there, so I got it by email. And another was going to do something with water. But all 5 of the groups had a plan. And my son said, I watched the president of this group. They started a store. They not only sell our lights, but they sell clothing and everything. And he says, so I watched her negotiate for a small store on the main street. Well, Main Street, yeah. And he said it was hilarious. He said, I'd never negotiate with her. He says, the owner kept saying, well, this and that. She says, no. And he goes on, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to pay that. We're not going to do this. And finally the owner threw up his hands. He says, fine, you write the contract. So, and he said, but she wasn't taking any nonsense from anybody. So I'm very proud of them, and I like visiting them when I get back. They have a tailor shop now, and they have a cafe, and they're doing all sorts of things.
Well, Dale, we're just about out of time, and we haven't really had enough time to really explore your work today. But for our viewers, they need to know that your vast experience with the poor and the underprivileged of the world has motivated you to establish this foundation called Koinonia, Koinonia.
Coin like a nickel. Coin like a nickel.
Coin like a
Koinonia.
nickel. And now the offices that you see behind Dale there are his foundation offices. He has a whole staff of people. They've invented solar light that they are distributing all over to these. You heard him tell about the women in Africa, setting them up in business. He also has a water purifier system. These lights are wonderful, and they can work for people like people who have recently been in America, who have recently been without power for 3 weeks. Everyone should have one of these lights, and you can purchase one through his foundation, through his website, and then the profit from that will go to help people all over the world. So it's a wonderful thing. You can also purchase his book as soon as it gets launched on Amazon, and the name of the company that sells the lights is PISAT Solar, PISATSOLAR.com, right?
Go to Koinonia website. That's much easier.
Okay.
It's
And then
www.kfaid.com. And it has links to the other two.
And those of you who are on watching this online, being broadcast, can go to the chat room, and there'll be an essay by Dale, and Dale will be in the chat room, and you can find all of these links there. So thank you very much for being with us. It's been interesting talking with you, Dale, and enjoyed having you. And this is Dorothy Mae Mercer for Talk Story TV. I'm signing off, and I'll see you soon. God bless you.
Thank you.